I'm Mr. Gooch, and today for Asian Movie Pulse, I'm going to be looking at the new wave classic from the wuxia genre, The Sword, directed by Patrick Tam, recently released on Blu-ray by Eureka Entertainment. 1980 was part of the time when we were seeing a change in the wuxia swordplay genre. Uh, a lot of influences starting to come through from the new wave filmmakers, bringing their sort of influence from the American studies, the American genres, the rest of the world to this ethos. Patrick Tam, for whom this was one of his first films, was definitely one of the highlights of the new wave. And this, on the surface, is your typical wuxia narrative, but there's a lot more at work in the play and the narrative as you see as the film progresses. It starts with a standard trope that we see quite frequently, the cursed sword, that is introduced by the sword maker and given to one of the regular faces of the genre around that time, Tian Feng as Fa Chin Shu. Most people recognize him from appearing alongside Bruce Lee, but was also a regular collaborator on lots of Shaw Brothers Golden Harvest movies, usually as either the villain or the master of the dojo, etc. on that bit. It's a very familiar face when you see him. And he's advised to get rid of the sword. It's cursed, or anything bad luck. But it'd be a very short story if he did that, so he keeps it. Fast forward a few years, and he has gone into seclusion because everyone is challenging him to be the greatest swordsman in the martial world. And one of those people hunting him down is our lead protagonist, played by Adam Cheng, as the character of Mak-yin. And he's introduced in a rather unusual way. It's an odd sort of arty kind of sort of setting as and there's a very surrealist sort of way, and you've got this legless almost detective, I want to say, who has information on everything, has his carrier pigeons behind him, etc. And Mak-yin turns up and he goes, I'm here, I'm looking for this swordsman, I wish to have a duel with him, just so I can test my skills. And he's asked who his master is, and he tells him, but the response is that this person never takes on any students, and it's just left at that particular point. Never is ever answered to move on and carry on. He gives him the money. We never find out where the money comes from either. It's just, here you are, standard story, move on, etc. And then we next encounter our antagonist, sorry, our protagonist, as he walks along, and he runs into Fa Ying-chi, played in a very early role by Jay Zhu. Our next typical trope from the wuxia genre, the conventions of the female knight who dressed as being a man. And I don't know whether it was Patrick Tam's intent here, but she's one of those least convincing cross-dressing characters you'll ever see. Blatantly feminine from the outset, yet no one else can see this apart from the audience. But again, it's a standard convention, so let's just move on with those. And they travel together for mutual support, etc. And they stop at this hotel, and turns out happens to be the residence of Mak-yin's long lost childhood sweetheart. Again, as you do. Now, if I'm talking about not coincidences, the whole genre was reliant on this, conventions, etc. So go with the flow here. And it's here we get to meet our antagonists. And we have to see Eddie Ko as Chan Tin-yi. Again, a regular sort of player in these features, a regular villain, will occasionally be the nominal lead and hero. You may remember from Hero Shed No Tears. would later go on to become very much a prominent sort of character actor with this sort of Christopher Walken style hairdo that never seems to change, regardless of the situation that he's put in. But we also get to meet our main villain here, brilliantly played by Norman Choi uh, as Lin Wan. Now, Norman Choi had been a regular feature for Saw Play features for the Choi Ran features for Shaw Brothers, and as a familiar face as a TV actor. He was building himself up. This is really his breakout movie, as far as I'm concerned, as the villain. He's not set up initially as such. He's set up as your courteous gentleman too, but then gets the reveal where he slaps his wife, who happens to be the yes, you've guessed it, the former childhood sweetheart of our hero, Lee Mak-yin. And these conventions and coincidences continue, etc. As now he wants to get rid of Lee Mak-yin, so he encourages Chan Yi to kill him, etc. Lots of confrontations now sort of ensue. Ultimately, it is revealed that Fa Ying-chi is the daughter of the person that Lee Mak-yin is seeking in Fa Chen-shu. Again, coincidence? Hold on to that thought, etc. They meet, they agree to duel. Fa Yin-chi now thinks that she's been betrayed by Lee Mak-yin because he's only using her to get to what he wants, which is this confrontation with her father. They duel, but never goes to a full conclusion. Our hero recognizes that the elder is unwell, so just merely injures him, and then he's going to recover from that. That'd be a rather short film if we conclude like that, but we've forgotten, of course, about Lin Wan, who finds a way to make sure that the elder is slain, that it looks like Lee Mak-yin has been responsible for the death of him, and that takes us to our incredibly violent conclusion that will ultimately resolve the film. Now, I'd said hold on to the thought earlier on that bit about coincidences, because this is on the surface, as I mentioned before, a very conventional Ruzar film. But look closer and it's anything but conventional. At the beginning, our hero never reveals how he's going to be taken on as a student of this martial arts master. Never reveals how he gets to have the money. It's a pure coincidence that he happens to meet the daughter of the man he's seeking en route. Now, if you watch the film, we should be just following it as such that this guy is actually just your conventional hero. But it's framed in such a way that we do question it a little bit. The camera lingers on that just a few split second, a bit longer in a couple of moments where he sort of smiles at points where the duel's agreed and thinking, hang on a second, this person may not be as moral as it's alluding to. Don't forget, the whole narrative is based around that this sword, is supposed to be a corrupting influence. And many a time we see a film that talks about such things on that bit. Sword with no names, Soul the Sword, etc. There's a lot of movies that have things where the sword is an extension of the human soul. So we're not to know that this person may not have been inadvertently corrupted by it, but it does make him a bit more interesting than your standard lead, in that the actions aren't necessarily as noble as what we're seeing on the surface. Norman Choi is fantastic as the villain with a revenge plot against practically everybody in this movie. As an actor, he would switch between good and bad guy roles, and that makes him more of an interesting performer because it's not the standard performance that we'd get to see from him. Eddie Coe, as I said, has more longer hair than what he would later become in his Christopher Walken hairdos, and plays Malice so well. There's this lackey trying to follow the orders of his superior. Now, I'm talking about a Wuxia movie. I haven't actually talked about the action yet. And this is one of the highlights of the feature, particularly as we mentioned at the beginning, we are moving now into a world of the new wave and a whole different range of filmmaking. And particularly, it's worth noting for who is involved in the choreography. Cheng Sutong, who would later become one of the, if not the greatest action choreographers, particularly when it comes to the use of wire work. This is a man who would direct Duel to the Death. He will be involved in the action choreography in the Swordsman 2, the Chinese ghost story movies, etc., etc. And this is where we now start to see the initial conventions of the what used to be the trampoline jumping movements, etc., to a more fluid, wire-based style. There's still some grounding in the action, but when it takes flight, it's recognizable that we're in the hands of a master here. The finale, the final moments in the last conflict, is extraordinary, and will what makes you want to cheer. It is exceptionally well done. It reminds me very much of a kind of vertical ending to John Woo's last hurrah for chivalry in terms of the attack. Not going to spoil more, just watch both movies actually. Cheng Soo-tun would go on to direct Duels to the Death, which, coincidence, maybe not, also had Norman Chui and Eddie Coe amongst the cast. And again, would have a slight break of the conventions in terms of narrative structure, as in the heroes and villains aren't necessarily as noble as they may first seem to be. The coincidences, there's at least a rationale for them if you look at it from a more close perspective in this feature, which makes it a bit more interesting. We're kind of seeing those standard tropes of Wuxia manipulated slightly for service for a better narrative. And this makes it for a much more complicated, much more nuanced and interesting film. It's just a shame that Patrick Tam didn't go on to make more movies. All of his work is very interesting, from Nomad to Final Victory, to My Heart Is That Eternal Rose. Uh, a string of very interesting, intelligent movies that play within the genres. Absolutely worth checking out. Cannot recommend this movie highly enough. Definitely, definitely one to see.